Every year, the nation's top dermatologists reveal what's next in skincare, what we'll all be talking about, posting about, and asking for in 2026. And this year, think cutting-edge injectables, regenerative treatments, and what people can do who've lost a lot of weight on Ozempic or another GLP-1 drug. Joining us now is board-certified dermatologist and cosmetic surgeon, Dr. Melanie Palm from Art of Skin, MD. Dr. Palm just wrapped a major presentation at the ASDS conference. That's the leading U.S. organization for dermatologists who specialize in cosmetic and medical skin procedures. And she's here with the inside scoop. Dr. Palm, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, I'm happy to be back.
You are always so informative for people. We love it. So I'm interested, that got my attention about the GLP-1 drugs because I remember all this stuff about the Ozempic face. So when you talked about, hey, there are things now that we can do for people, that might really help a lot of people.
It is. I think the statistic now is 1 in 8 Americans has actually tried a GLP-1. Wow. And we know that obesity is a huge percentage of the American population. So I think that it will continue to probably increase in terms of patients that have tried some of these GLP-1 agonists. And so many of our hot topics at this American Society for Dermatologic Surgery were focused on how do we support these patients through their journey. And what's really interesting, I'm actually publishing an article on GLP-1 patients and its effects in the skin. And there's kind of a bifurcation. So these drugs can be really amazing if they're used properly and the weight loss is slow. If people are sedentary, they haven't had an active lifestyle, their diet isn't great, and they're losing big quantities of weight, that's where metabolically and soft tissue-wise, there's some undesired effects. But if somebody is losing weight slowly, still active during that time, has a great diet, there's actually anabolic activities that happen, which means sort of tissue building capabilities. Wow. So we may actually make skin prettier. We may, and we know from studies, we can maintain the muscle mass while we're actually losing some of the unwanted fat. So I think it's all in finesse, and we're just at the beginning stages of this. So many of our talks focused on how do we support with collagen stimulators, or placement of fillers. There was actually a great study that looked at patients that had lost almost 20% of their body weight, had been about 1.5 years into that weight journey with GLP-1. And with support of collagen stimulators, those are things like Sculptra and Radiesse, or hyaluronic acid fillers in appropriate areas in the mid-face, we could really sort of bring back to life skin laxity. Wow. So if people are getting jowls, if they're starting to notice accordion lines in that area, and just the skin quality was improved by those changes.
Well, I think that people are even complain of that, whether they're on GLP-1 or not, as they age, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's changes in what we call our craniofacial support, how our bone remodels, how our fat compartments, we've got a system of deep and superficial fat compartments, how they change. And that talks to the skin. And what I think is sort of interesting, something else that I presented on was muscle toning. So we now have devices that can actually help tone the muscle and bring back, with a series of treatments in a single sort of series, about 20% of the muscle mass that we start to lose. So really addressing upper face, mid face, lower face, underneath the chin, now even under eyes, we can start to regenerate some of the muscle there. So not just making the tissue denser, but actually creating new muscle cells as well.
That's amazing. Can we go back to these pictures, these before and after, and let Dr. Palm tell us what was the issue?
What we're showing?
Yeah,
Sure.
Tell us what this is.
So this is actually one of those muscle toning patients. So if you look under this patient's chin, you can notice a change in what we call the cervical mental angle. So it's usually really pretty if we have that nice 90-degree angle underneath the chin transitioning to the neck. And you can see in her before, we're losing that. It's sort of a diagonal. So she was treated in what's called this digastric muscle. These are muscles that sort of support the underside of the chin. This is non-invasive. It feels like a warm pad and almost like a little corkscrew working on your muscle. And this is her with 4 treatments, non-invasive, no downtime. You can do it once to twice a week. So many of us that were all over the country that have devices that address this muscle toning, love this, and we're combining it a lot with some of the lasers, energy-based devices, and some of the injectable techniques we're using in our clinics.
That is really amazing to look at that before and after.
Yeah, it's dramatic. I mean, and it shows you how much that transition from face to neck can make a difference in sort of how we look at a face.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So talk about some regenerative skin treatments.
Yeah, so we do a lot of clinical trials at Art of Skin MD, and so one of the areas of focus was on skin boosters, which have been around. We were lucky enough, I was one of the principal investigators for a product called Skin Vive. So that's injected. We did this study in the buccal region, and now the neck region is being studied and reviewed by the FDA. So these are actually some before and afters of those patients. These are more subtle. It's about skin quality. So I tell patients, first we kind of look at structure, we look at great skin care, but this is something that we kind of use to face tune areas that we're noticing some subtle crepey changes, fine lines. It hydrates the skin. So even though it's a syringe of material, I tell patients it's not really a filler, it's a skin hydrator and a skin quality improvement mechanism. So this is something sort of regenerative, and then we brought some, we'll get into some skincare whenever you want, but some of the regenerative things that were talked about a lot were exosomes. And we talked about salmon sperm last time.
I've seen that on Instagram.
Yeah, that falls into some of these categories.
Does that work?
You know, so in the U.S., we are just supposed to apply it topically, and I think there can be help. But I think if you talk to most board-certified dermatologists and plastic surgeons, maybe some of us are dabbling with using it topically. But you'll see on social media people are injecting it. In other countries, you can inject it. But really, we shouldn't be doing that here in the U.S. because the FDA hasn't given its sort of seal of approval with that.
But topically?
But topically, it's really interesting. You know, we do a lot of exosome work, and these are little packets that get pinched off of our cells, and they contain messages that are very anti-inflammatory and pro-building. So we use that topically, either in the office in conjunction with things like microneedling to help with skin quality or even help with hair regrowth.
Wow.
Or we have topical formulations you can use at home that's a topical lotion that helps things. And I tell patients, if you haven't been able to tolerate a retinoid, this is a great substitute, or it can be an adjunctive therapy to that, just a general anti-ager for the skin.
And you have a product that's like that?
So there's several different brands. I'm showing one called Invo Aesthetics, and this has been available for about a little less than a year. The reason I like this is it's formulated TNS, which is one of the first growth factor products that was available about 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, I have heard of that.
He's a very well-known formulator, and it's got a high concentration of exosomes, but also has peptides, proteins, and growth factors in it. And I tell patients it's got a really nice price point compared to some of the other exosomes out there. There's a couple of other companies, Benev and Plated. I think they're good products too. But I look at this as a category that's expanding, but I think there's some great products. If you talk to an educated board-certified dermatologist, they can kind of guide you through the differences between some of them.
You definitely said a lot of the buzzwords just in that one product, so that's good to know. What are some of the cutting-edge injectables that you guys were discussing?
So there was a lot of research that was being presented about things that are under review right now. So a study that I was a part of was temple filling. We've got one product that's FDA approved here in the US, and that's Voluma, and there'll soon, hopefully, be a second one if the FDA approves that. And what's neat about that is we can inject it on label in a couple of different planes. So it used to be we just injected it on top of bone. Now we have a chance of doing it deeply in the temple, or we can use something called a cannula, which is a little instrument with a blunt tip, safer possibly, to be able to inject in a superficial area where we seem to have more longevity in that effect. And then other areas that are now sort of on label are the chin, which we've been using that filler products in that area, but we finally have some on-label bases for that. And then newer products kind of coming down the line, there's a shorter acting botulinum toxin. So many of us are familiar with Botox, Dysport, Jeuveau, Daxxify, Xeomin. These are products that are now FDA approved here in the US to relax frown lines and help with crow's feet or forehead lines. So there's a botulinum toxin type E. We actually took part in the study, so some of that data was presented. It kicks in hours, but it lasts like a week or two.
That's all. It only lasts.
Only lasts, yeah.
Oh, it's short term. Why
Very
would you
short
want
term.
that?
So I think we're trying to figure out what the best use case,
Yes.
you know, things that I've heard bounced around is maybe somebody who's a little timid just wants to try it out, or oh my gosh, you've got a wedding you're attending.
Yes, I like that
and
aspect of it.
It's Thursday and you need to call your
Yes.
person and I need it to kick in. So there's going to be new neuromodulators coming to the market that are available in Europe that are already pre-made, so we don't have to mix them up. They come in the liquid. Some that are non-animal and non-human form, which is great. There's no protein component that's a contaminant in that way, and kicks in sooner and lasts longer. So we're seeing some products that are lasting closer to 6 months truly, rather than the 3 to 4 months that we typically see with most neuromodulators.
That's nice. I want one that lasts longer, not shorter.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the surge in seeing men come into your office and offices like yours.
I love this topic because I think male patients are so great. I do general dermatology, so I see actually a pretty balanced sort of patient population, but aesthetics tends to skew more female than male. And so I just finished writing an article. It's now published. I was the first author, and it's called Skincare in Men, and it's in the journal Facial Plastic Surgery.
Okay.
And the down low is basically men don't do skincare. Only about 17% of men use a sunscreen on a daily basis. And I think the challenge is that they tend to have riskier behaviors and they come in later with more significant things. And so really we want to teach men just basic habits, kind of like grooming. I mean, they're doing things such as like, you know, facial hair controlled, whatever, however they're grooming that, but we want to teach them about daily sunscreen use, actually using products. These are a couple of male patients. Some of them were even in this article. And their biggest issues typically are hair loss, crow's feet or their frown line is what they look at, and sun damage. And so being able to help with that, but men, because of their daily grooming habits, if they're doing something with their facial hair, they get sensitivity. So even though they have thicker skin, oilier skin, they actually have more sensitive skin in some ways because they have more sensitive blood vessels in how they react. And they're daily almost doing an exfoliating treatment.
Yeah, I guess so.
You really have to sort of be careful in sort of creating a more sort of bespoke approach for our male patients and differing that from our female patients.
You wouldn't just use the same, maybe a man shouldn't just use what's in his wife's medicine cabinet, right?
No, not necessarily. I think sometimes it's a good start because at least we get them using something. I usually will talk to male patients, and I think, you know, this is obvious coming from the dermatologist, but a great sunscreen. So I actually brought one that's new to the market. It's called UV Skin Recovery Complex, and the reason I like it is it's got an amino acid complex in it and an Asian plant called Centella asiatica that calms skin and repairs the skin barrier. So this can be really helpful if you're doing something like shaving, if you're a rosacea patient, sensitive skin patient, and it's got a green tint, so it camouflages a little bit too.
Yeah, it does.
And gives some skin radiance.
Any
over
redness.
time. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's holiday-esque, green for your red.
Well, I wonder, you know what, I just got some of this brand, this Elta.
Elta MD, yeah.
They had it, I think I got it on an Amazon deal. So you might be able to even find it on an Amazon deal.
And
right
it's
now.
a very reasonably priced
Yeah, it
sunscreen
is.
line. I think if you talk to most board-certified dermatologists, we want patients on a mineral-based sunscreen, at least an SPF 15 or 30, broadband coverage. This offers all of that. It's zinc oxide, and then it has this amino acid blend, a little bit of green tint, and then this Asian plant that calms the skin too.
What's this clinical power trio? I want to know what that is.
So this is a company or a product line called Definage, and I really like it because it contains a protein called defensins in it, and this is a small protein. When used topically, it helps thicken the skin. So if you continually use it on the skin gets a little thicker. We notice brown spots diminish. So for some of my patients with more mature skin on their arms, if they're consistent with using, they've got a body and hand lotion, I think it's great. Helps thicken up the skin and helps with some of the fading of brown spots and makes skin healthier without being irritating to the skin. So it comes as a pack of 3. There's 2 active agents you use as step 2 and 3, and there's a fun little sort of chemical exfoliator that you use twice a week in the shower.
Can you do laser on your arms? Yeah.
Yeah.
to get those sunspots away.
You
or
can.
spotting.
You know, our facial skin is really different from neck, décolleté,
Sure.
and hand. So there's not as many pilosebaceous units, not as many oil glands, hair follicles there. So you have to be a little careful with which lasers we use, how much tan is there, and the power, which is per area, is called fluence. So we adjust some of those settings if we're off the face and tend to do a little more conservative settings if we're doing the hand or the
Interesting.
forearms.
Okay, Dr. Palm, we could have you here all day long and talk skin, couldn't we?